Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Carlton People. Today, you're going to meet Connor Rogers. Well, I think most of you, especially those of you who watch content, AFL content, you'll know who Connor is, but we're going to meet Connor the Carlton man. Hello, mate. What's going on?
Never better, Terry, mate. It's easy to be feeling good now after 25 years of being a Carlton supporter with shame. I'm a Carlton supporter with pride, mate. So life's good at the moment.
It is. I'd like to say that now that we're out the other end, it's going to be worth it. For a period of time there, it was a struggle town.
100%, mate. I've experienced it firsthand at local level where this is like under 11s, but my first 2 years of playing at the Banyule Football Club, we didn't win a game. For 2 years, we literally didn't win a game, belted by 100 points. And then in our third year, a bunch of blokes left the club. We convinced them to come back. And with the same team, we won the premiership. And having won the premiership with the same team off the back of a winless 2 years, our first win felt like winning a premiership. And then to win it at the end of the year was like the greatest feeling I've ever felt. So knowing that I've got that with Carlton and we've got 25 years of pain to really launch into the glory, it's all worth it.
I'll take 25 years of success for 25 years of pain if everything evens out.
100%, man. You just want us to be. I look at a club like Geelong or Sydney and their supporters that are my age, and I go, you've missed finals like 2 years. I've made finals 2 years. I would love to have a stretch like that where it's just sustained success for a good chunk of time. I think we earned that.
We have, mate. Well, why don't we move into you and your Carlton story, and I guess maybe you can tell us, how did you become a supporter and what is your Carlton story?
I think I got into it the same way most of us did. My old man, Scotty Rogers, diehard, one-eyed Carlton supporter, as big a Carlton supporter as I know. And he still apologises to me for this to this day because he says, by the time I was your age, I'd seen 5 or 6 premierships and I've seen like 3 or 4 wooden spoons. So, man, I remember going to games as a kid with my dad. And I remember, this is when we were at our worst. I turned to dad when we were down by, 10 goals at halftime, whatever it was. And, we'd obviously just lost a few games by a big margin. And I said to him, Dad, do you want to leave? It must have been 3/4 time. I said, do you want to leave and beat the traffic? And he said to me, son, we never leave because give it 10 years, we'll be with the team winning premierships. Fast forward 10 years and we won another wooden spoon. So but we stuck the course and it's all worthwhile, hopefully.
Wow.
Yeah.
And is he now just as wild as he was back then? Is he right into it with this new wave?
Yeah, no, he is. He's into it as ever. I'm going with him to the game on the weekend. I think it's humbled him. I think maybe it's not relatable for us, Terry, but I think maybe a lot of the Carlton supporters of old, the brush they get tarnished with regularly is a brush of arrogance. So I think the humbling was good, and rather than take the premierships for granted, they're gonna really get touched by this next one.
Yeah, I think so too. There's gonna be a lot of tears one day, mate, when the two generations get to unite and have one shared memory rather than us being told about the good old days and having to live through those stories.
Yeah, it's funny when you being a one-eyed supporter as we all are. It's funny when you're at your worst. I never went into a premiership thinking we're going to be bottom 4. I never went into a year thinking we're going to be bottom 4. I always walked in thinking, gee, if this goes right and this goes right, you never know. This could be the year that, we might break into the 8 or whatever. But until you've got an actual good team and you're looking at gun players and you're like, oh, where are we going to, when David Cunningham's fit, when are we going to fit these blokes in? Whereas back in the day, some of the players running around, it was, they wouldn't quite get a look into our list right now.
I don't think so. Yeah. What's your earliest memory? How far into your brain can you go? Your earliest flash of memory of Carlton?
My earliest memory, I would say, is when Eddie Betts got drafted, he became my favourite player instantly. Like from his first game, he was my favourite player to a point where, if you talk to other supporters at school, they wouldn't have even known who Eddie Betts was. And I remember I made him a handwritten card for an open training session, just telling him how much I loved him. And by this stage, he would have only played 3 or 4 games. So he wasn't the fan favorite yet, where he would have got this stuff all the time. For whatever reason, he just became my favorite. So I remember I walked up to him at the start of training and I gave him the card. And I remember that he visually, like I was only a tiny kid, but he seemed touched by it. And he went to do kick to kick with whoever he was kicking with, and he kept the card in between his legs for about half an hour, like until training started. Then he ran over to a trainer and gave him the card and said, "Can you put this away for me?" But that was my first memory, and then he became, from then, as if he wasn't my favorite already, saying how much he appreciated that was what really was why I got number 19 on my back.
Wow. Isn't it funny how much one of those interactions can do for a kid? Like you're rusted on from that exact moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you go to the games, you have his number on the back, and a bit like the NBA style, not that I'm big into it, but when you have a favorite player as a kid, like Eddie Betts was, you become just so fixated on the player rather than the team sometimes. And if he was available inside forward 50 and we went somewhere else, it'd almost be flat that it wasn't Eddie Betts that kicked the goal. And then later on in the year, he had a breakout game, and I remember leaving the house and I said to Dad, "How many goals do you reckon Eddie's going to kick today?" And he said, "I reckon he's going to kick 4." And then he kicked 4, and I was like, "Yeah, this is we got a serious player on our hands here."
I like that. That's a first. I haven't heard that as a first memory yet. So that's a nice one to add to the collection here.
Yeah, I'm glad. I don't actually like, in terms of first games or anything like that, nothing is really sticking out. I know like the first games I went to, we would always get belted. So maybe my brain's like deliberately put the trauma into one side of the one corner of the head. And then the nice memories like that Eddie Betts one really sticks out.
Man, I'm the same. I mean, I was born in 91. I do remember a flash of a memory of being at Princess Park. I know that we played against St Kilda. I don't know why I know that, but I just remember exactly where I was sitting. I don't remember what happened during the game. Couldn't tell you what year it was. I would definitely have been somewhere between 5 and 8 years old, but I really don't remember anything up until like 2005, 6, 7, once we got Murphy, Judd, and Gibbs, Cruiser, these guys. I've completely forgotten about it all.
Yeah, funny you say that. The other memory that sticks out is when I was driving with, like, Dad was obviously driving. I was only about 6 years old or whatever. Dad's driving. I'm in the back seat. My sister's in the front seat. And on the radio was the AFL draft 2005. And I remember Dad pulled over because of how much he wanted to tune in and listen to it. And it was pick 1, Carlton, Mark Murphy. And he was there gassing it up, saying, "This is the start. This is where it all turns. We've got the Messiah. We've got Mark Murphy. He'll turn the club." So, yeah, that as well. And I also remember the other significant memory is being in my auntie's backyard once again with my dad, and the news came through by phone that Chris Judd had been traded to Carlton, and that's the other big memory I have as well.
Do you remember when he first started playing for us, like his first 10 games? Do you remember going to those games?
Not really, man. It's worth noting that I have a shocking memory at the best of times, but I remember he instantly became, I remember thinking Nick Stevens was going to become the captain, and then Chris Judd walks in, he became the skipper. But yeah, no, why did he dominate?
No, there was just, he probably wasn't at his best in his first year, but there was something about every time he went near the ball. And I remember going to games, I would have been in year 12. I was 16, 17 that year. And every time he went near the ball, touched the ball, the crowd would, when you can hear anticipation?
Yeah, 100%.
It was like that. It was just like anything he did, anytime he went near it. And he wasn't even playing at his best because he was coming off the injuries, the osteitis pubis, and there was just an aura about him, and it lasted for so long.
Yeah, no, he was the king. People say we lost out of that trade, but look, man, like when you end up with a figure like Chris Judd, like an all-time great at your football club, you can't lose. You can draw the trade, but you can't lose that trade as far as I'm concerned. I have a funny feeling, man, and this is based off nothing other than pure hope more than anything. But I have a funny feeling we're going to see history repeat itself in 6 years or so when Harley Reid comes to Carlton.
Harley Reid to Carlton, mate.
I have a funny feeling, man. I don't know why. It's just one of those things where you think he comes back to Melbourne and, history repeats itself with a big West Coast Carlton trade. I just hope we don't have to give up Josh Kennedy this time.
Yeah, we've got to learn from our mistakes, no doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. So as we go into, this new era, so your experience, your memory, we've got Murphy, Gibbs, Cruiser, Judd, that era. What do you remember about that ending and then this new era starting?
I mean, I think the turning, because there was so much hope under Brett Ratton when we did have Judd, Murphy, Gibbs, Cruiser. We had Favola up front, and you know that was enough hope in itself to think that we could make a final. And I remember when the first time I cried due to a game of footy was when we were 5 or 6 goals up against West Coast. Was it Brisbane or West Coast first? What happened
In the finals?
in the finals?
Yeah, Brisbane at the
Yeah,
Gabba.
against Brisbane, and we had family friends over, and they left at three-quarter time saying, or whenever we kicked the first goal of the last, I think, and they said, we're leaving, this game's over. They weren't Carlton supporters, but they said, we're leaving. And we said, don't leave, you're going to put the mods on us. And they said, no, the game's over. They left, and then Brisbane went bang, 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 bang. We lost the game, and I remember that was the first time I cried. I cried and I got angry, which I never get angry, but I got emotional. And then the West Coast final happened as well. Andrew Walker was held, all the rest of it.
He was so held. Makes me
He was
sick.
held.
Yeah.
So I remember that, and then when Bratton got sacked and Malthouse came in as the Messiah, that was cause for new hope. But then we just made every wrong decision possibly imaginable, and the club was a shambles. So I think the beginning of the new era was when Bolton came in. I mean, I know that people would think it might be Voss, where it's the start of we started really getting good, but that footage of Bolton being in the rooms with the players or in the meeting rooms and sticking up like Wiedering, Marchbank, De Cotting, it might have been Curnow and Mackay, and saying there's a spine to get excited for the future. I think that's the start, man. That draft where we got Curnow, Mackay, Wiedering, Sauce, and Cunningham. Obviously, the latter less significant than the first three, but when you get that in your first in your draft, I think that's a real catalyst for change.
I have to admit, I panicked 2021, 2022. Oh, sorry, 2020 and 2021. I got to a point where maybe it was the scarring of the previous rebuild with all the stars. I got to a point where I thought it's just not going to happen. We're just a club. It's going to be a cycle of bad culture, and we're just not going to be able to figure it out. Did you ever lose a bit of hope?
Oh, I did in the first 10 games or whatever it might have been of last year. Like when we went on the negative run because with the Bolton stuff, I believed in the vision. Like I was there going, let's wait until Wiedering and these guys are 25, 26. I was happy that we set the reset button rather than just keep trying to recycle players through and always finish, outside the 8. So I was happy to wait till then. But then when Voss came in last year, and to be honest, when he came in, I wasn't sold on Vossi. I'm happy to eat my words now. But I wasn't we didn't recruit Voss, and I went, yes, okay, this is the decision I wanted. But I wasn't against it either, but I just wasn't inspired by it. And then when we went on that shocking run and we got pumped by Essendon, I was there going, man, maybe we are cursed. Maybe we just weren't meant to have nice things. And I was never a sack Vosser, not that early, but I was certainly thinking, have we made the right decision? And it was actually my housemate at the time, Cam, he's a Richmond supporter, and he sent me that documentary from when they won their first premiership. And at the start of the premiership, it shows all the calls to SEN telling them, we need to sack Hardwick, etc., putting the memberships in the microwave, all that sort of stuff. And then the next year they won the premiership, and Cam said to me, mate, trust me, watch this documentary, stay the course, it'll turn good, stick with Vossi. And that actually gave me a lot of hope. Who would have thought a Richmond documentary gives me hope? And then that the next week was when we started that winning run, and I thought, oh my God, we're going to have the documentary made about us. And that low point under Voss will be where the documentary starts. Didn't quite work out last year, but it might roll onto this one.
We're on the way. Yeah, I look back now at that time, and I remember thinking man, we've got all the players on the list. You got good age profile, Coleman medalists, great defenders, great midfielders, some good role players in there. And in hindsight, I think the one thing we hadn't proven as a club was our ability to stick it out when shit was hitting the fan. Because usually it would be pressure cooker, media, fans, implosion. All right, sack, and then you sort of release the pressure and we sort of go through that cycle. So I'm hoping it is the catalyst for change. I mean, it looks like it has been so far. You know, we're talking on the 26th of April, 2024. Have you thought about Grand Final Day?
Pardon?
Have you thought about Grand Final Day and what that would be like?
I have, mate. I have, especially since I've actually got grand final tickets locked in, which last year was my first ever. So I got to go to Collingwood, Brisbane. And I've managed to get 2 locked in this year. So when I found out that I had them locked in, I'm there just salivating at the thought of being able to bring the old man and go watch us at the big dance. What I am convinced about is that we will never, as long as I live, have a better opportunity at a premiership than with this squad. If we do, then I'm happy to eat my words. If we get to a point in 40 years when I'm 65 or 66, if we get to that stage and we have a better list, a better spine than Wiedering and Charlie and Mackay and Kerno and Walsh and all the rest of them, then, man, I'll be gobsmacked. But if we don't win a premiership with this team, then you'll never have a better opportunity at it. So to win a grand final, you need so much luck. Like, even if you are the best team, it's not guaranteed. It could be the bounce of a ball or a team just gets you on the day. So I'm not assuming premierships, but I am convinced that we'll never have a better chance at it.
I'd like to say I'm convinced that we'll never see a bad decade like what we did growing up.
I hope you're right. I hope we've cracked the code and figured it. But not that I was too young at the time, but that was all off the back of the salary cap scandal and whatnot. So as long as we don't go a couple of years without losing all our draft picks, or we go the Essendon route of a bit of AOD 9604, I think we should. I think you should be right there, and we don't go back into those doldrums.
Yeah. Now, you've had a really interesting couple of years, I would say. We see you pop up, AFL play, content creation. What's your story when it comes to this sort of stuff? Is this something you had always wanted to do, planned to do, and maybe tell the audience, what do you do?
So I quickly realized in high school that my only strength was talking shit. Like, I remember at a year 12 English exam, I never owned a textbook. I never owned a workbook. I was a shocking student. I sat at the back of the class and watched sports highlights. And your English teacher knows that you don't read the book, so they always mark you shocking for your sacks during the year. But then when it gets to your exam at the end of the year and an examiner marks it from the VCAR or whatever, they don't know that you haven't read the books. So I was so good at talking shit that even though I hadn't read the books or the movies, I got 2 A+ in both the English exams, or however they mark them. So they had to go back and read through all my sacks just to make sure that I wasn't getting cheated by my teacher, like they didn't have a vendetta against. There was some sort of thing like that. So that's when I realized, there might be something in this talking shit business. So I decided then that I wanted to be like a podcaster, or I always wanted to be a radio host, to be honest, was a goal. Like Hamish and Andy everyone says this, but Hamish and Andy were the ones for me. And Andy Lee, shout out, great Carlton man.
Great Carlton man.
So then I did some work experience at SCN, which was good, with Brett Phillips, tennis expert there. And then I was lucky enough to meet Caden McDonald, who is now my best friend, but the #1 AFL YouTuber, which I'm sure everyone watching in the present day knows anyway.
He's the OG, mate.
The OG. So we became best mates, not through content, just through another way. We became best mates. We ended up living together. And just by association of him, I've been lucky enough to get gigs with the AFL. So I now host The Slice, which is a show on AFL Play, which is sort of aimed at getting people that aren't already into footy. So talking with footballers a lot of the time, but about things that aren't really footy related. So that fires back up in the next couple of weeks. And then I'm not sure how long for, but I'm currently the voice of The 10, which is the top 10 highlights the AFL posts on a Sunday night. And then when I'm not doing that, I just host some pub trivia. I'm playing Div 12 Resis with my housemates, Checkers and Stray, the Marmalade Boys.
Yeah.
So that's providing a lot of fun as well, mate. Finger in a few different pots.
Isn't it wild how the world changed I don't know when, like there was like a 20-year period, I think, where I think a lot of us knew what we wanted to do. Like, I mean, back in the day, it was, I want to, in your case, it was be a radio host, because that's kind of all we could dream of. And then these platforms came. I know for me, I was working in an office job. I was a lawyer, but I was watching Arsenal Fan TV and just sort of watching the world change. YouTube, Instagram, all these platforms come and people build careers out of it. And I remember thinking at the time, I don't know what's going on, but I know something's happening.
Yeah. It was
And
crazy. I'm not actually. I'm a bit of an old-fashioned guy. Like, I'm not on TikTok. I have it for the sake of uploading if I do ever decide to make some content. But I'm not on TikTok. I'm not really like, I don't watch YouTubers. Like, I never watch Logan Paul or anything like that. So for me, it was just so lucky that Caden came into my life, because he was the one that showed me the world of podcasts and the possibilities. And I remember when we first became mates, I thought it was a bit of a pipe dream on his end. Like, when he said that he was a YouTuber and he just makes videos in his room, and he has like a little podcast or whatever. Not for 1 second did I think, oh, this is a viable long-term career. I thought that this was just a hobby that, people like to do on the internet to have their voice heard. But, I was goes to show how naive and clueless I was, because sure enough, all the people I surround myself with now, this is their full-time job. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And I think people want to hear a fresh voice. And I think the mainstream media, as good as it is, it has a certain rhythm, it has a certain tone, it has a certain monotony about it. So to have that broken up with perhaps more relatable characters, younger people. Caden always says that you go on, the youngest person on Fox Footy is like Bernie Vince. Like, he's meant to be the young guy on the bounce or whatever that, gives the old guys shit. But he's like, he'd be over 40, he'd be like 40 now or something like that. So just to have some younger voices in the atmos, I think has gone a long way.
Mal, couldn't agree more. I think we've got ex-players, which I totally understand why you want to have players talking about the game on broadcast or, in general. You've got, sports journos, traditional media. I think the obvious one, and I guess they're starting to now, but the obvious one to add to the mix is the fans, because the fans make up a portion of what footy is. I mean, the players and the administrators, they'll always be, the key cogs in what we see on a broadcast, and I understand that. But I mean, when I watch European content, American content, these aren't traditional professionals all the time, and I think we're just a little bit behind here. And I think we've started to make inroads. You start seeing, the content creators per se come in, but really the content creators that we see, they're footy fans. That's what we are. We're just fans of our clubs and of the game, and I think that's a big opportunity for the next wave of when the next commentators are coming through, or the next hosts are coming through.
I think what people want more than anything is relatability. It's why like reality TV took such a big spike at one point, because they were relatable, and then it's had its downfall because now it's just like influencers and whatnot. It's not people that are like genuinely relatable, and that's what people want on their screens. So when you have fans and they're one of you, they're people who see the game the same way. I think there is a lot of relatability there, and it's why people enjoy watching them so much. Like the old, when they used to do the EPL fan cam TV, like where you watch to, like, there'd be a diehard Man United and a diehard Liverpool fan or whatever. They watch it together and they're commentating and they're going mental. That's so fun, man. Like I hope AFL sort of goes in that direction with some of their content.
I hope so. Yeah. I mean, some of the best memories I have doing all of this, it's all from the fan cams after the games, whether we've been down in the dumps after Essendon beat us last year, or when Collingwood beat us in 22, and then carrying on like absolute pork chops when we beat Richmond in round 1, 2022. Like, it was a big breakthrough. Capturing those moments, I mean, I don't know where it's all going to go, but one day, I think I said this to you off camera, like when we're dead, these memories are now here forever. It's raw.
That's right. And the fans have the best insight of any. They have more insight than the experts. And what I mean by that is, and this isn't just to give myself a pat on the back, but I remember when like Jordan Boyd came onto the scene and he played a handful of games. I was telling anyone that wanted to listen to me in the off season, Boyd is so crucial to our, because he's got the elite shoe off, half back, all the rest of it. And Adam Cooney, this is 2 years ago, so it wasn't even last year. It was like the off season before that. Adam Cooney was on SEN, and he said, "Ring in now with the player that you think's gonna take the competition by storm or come out of nowhere next year. I rang in, and I don't ring in SEN often, but I said, Jordan Boyd. But none of the experts would really know who Jordan Boyd, like, because they have to be across every team for you're not going to be across the Jordan Boyds of the world. And then sure enough, he's come in and, now they can't stop talking about him. So I think if you had that expert fan insight, maybe one from each club, and you turn that into a show, on Fox Footy, I think that has a heap of potential. If Carlton's playing Collingwood, you have one Carlton Nuffy and one Collingwood Nuffy talking about, look, just quickly, they had our best 22s at the start of the year, and none of them had Boydie in our best 22 on like the Fox predictor and whatnot. And I was there thinking he's a certain starter, but the experts didn't have them in. And I'm like, if you had the fans' perspective on that, for each team, they'd be able to actually help you out.
Do you think fans get painted with a brush? I mean, like, you mentioned the word Nuffy. Do you reckon fans get painted with a brush that they're not intelligent because we're just looked at as barrackers in the crowd and we're just yelling and screaming and going crazy?
Yeah, I think there is. And even as like a content creator, that's a hurdle to get over where you meet players or coaches or anyone in the media like an Eddie Maguire or whatever, and you're self-conscious that you're going to come across, or you're just like a fan, like, and that has a negative sort of spin on it, not a positive one. It's like you're just a Nuffy fan that doesn't know anything. But then you got to get past that and you realize the fans are such an integral, well, they are the game. Like without the fans, there isn't, the players aren't on the money, they are. So once you get past that, and I got past that pretty early, like 3-4 years ago, and you realize you're not just a fan, you're a fan. Like it's actually a good thing to be that. Then you can start acting with a bit of confidence when you're around these sorts of people.
Yeah, no, I always do find that weird. I know early days when I was like, oh, what do you do? Like, yeah, got a fan channel, and you can just smell it. Like, you can just smell it. You don't get emails replied to you because, I mean, I know I used to do it. There's always that client that you didn't want to reply to because you just couldn't be fucked dealing with them. And I knew I was getting that same treatment.
Yeah.
And then I do think it's turning slowly but surely. And I think maybe in 10, 15 years, whoever the new content creators are then, their pathway won't be as difficult because, like you said earlier, Australia is a little or a bit hard when it comes to change and evolution.
I mean, without doxing anyone, I've spoken to like elite Australian athletes, like people that play for the country of Australia, and they said that they like hate the Australian. Don't hate's a strong word, but they really dislike the Australian culture when it comes to sports because we're so quick to shit on people and shit on things, and like rather than take the opposite route. Whereas if you go to like say India, right, in a cricketing sense, like Australia will arrive off the plane in India and they get treated like royalty, whereas in Australia, the Australian cricketers, unless you're dominating, they can get treated like shit.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, man, the Australian sporting culture is a weird one, but I think it is turning. I think people are starting to be more accepting of the fans.
Yeah, all in good time. Back to footy, back to the Blues. I'm going to ask you a few questions before we wrap up. So you've got 6 games under your belt with a bit of a sample size of data. Who do you think is going to win our BNF this year?
I think it'll probably be. I was going to say Cripper. I think it will be Cripper. I have a feeling that he could win the Brownlow this year. I don't like, which I'm stoked about, man. Because I was stoked when he won the original Brownlow, when he won his first Brownlow, because there are so many good players like a Pendles who go through their whole career without winning one, and that doesn't really diminish his career. But I was so happy that once Cripps won one, that's like in the history books forever. But if he wins a second, man, that's there's only a handful or so of people that have done that. So I think Cripps will win the BNF, but Walshy's making me double think that. I think that in the Barnstorm home. I'll go with Cripper.
All right. Who's a player right now that, less than 50 games or so that you can see really elevating in the next 5 to 10 years and becoming one of the better players in the group?
Yeah, my favorite player is Jordan Boyd. He is my favorite player. Like he was like my Eddie Betts from when I was a kid. Like I just saw him in 2 games, and all you have to see with like these guys in their first few games, you just have to see something that has a premiership trait about it. And his decision making and kicking, I was like, forget about all the rest, whatever deficiency you might have had at the time. That is the sort of stuff that wins you a premiership. So I've sort of really closely followed his journey. Like I tacked him on as like, he's my boy. And to see him now flourish and now getting all the mainstream attention where they're talking about him on the commentary. I'll talk to like my housemates and they'll bring up Boydie of how good he played. So yeah, I'm massive on Boydie, and I think he could be an All-Australian halfback one day.
I love it. Yeah. I got to chat with him a few weeks ago.
I
You know what I
saw
love
that.
about him? I love that he doesn't love football. I love that he's got the balance of life. We're talking off camera about like some of his other music festivals that he's been to, and I was like, oh my God, like this is a proper normal human that has experienced things that I have, and it's like he's really relatable.
Yeah, it is good. I think that goes to show the pathway of like coming in a bit later and experiencing life as, and this isn't taken away from any of the players who got drafted at 18, it's not, but seeing that relatability, like we were talking about before, of a kid who lived an adult life, not as a footballer. It's, man, he just seems like such a likable guy.
Yeah. Final question. Which year will the boys lift up the cup?
Mate, I'm conflicted on this because I desperately, obviously, want it to be this year. But I've had this vision the last couple of years, and I have a lot of downtime in some of the more mundane jobs I do where I have time to myself. And the vision I have is we've won the premiership, and they're reading out the medals, and they go number 15, Sam Doherty, and the whole crowd erupts like you've never heard the MCG go up before. And as much as I want to win the premiership this year, I want to see off the back of a couple of bouts of cancer and 3 ACLs, I want to see Sam Doherty be presented with the medal. So as much as I want it to be this year, the vision in my head is of Sam Doherty accepting the medal. So I think it's going to be next year, and I think he's going to win the Norm Smith as well, and in one of the great moments in football history.
Can we have both? Can we have
We
this
can
year?
have both. We can have both. That would be nice. Maybe a three-peat as well. But yeah, I definitely think next year with Doc in the side.
Amazing. Well, hey, this has been a really good chat. I really enjoyed it. Thanks so much for your time, and we will definitely be in touch over the journey, mate.
Absolutely, mate. Here we go. Strap in because it's about to get really fun.
Go Blues.
Go Blues.